Welcome to the Tipton Thrives Podcast. My name is Riley, and I'm the host, and I'm happy to be joined by the mayor of the City of Tipton, Mayor Schmicker. Welcome, Keegan.
Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, happy to be here. This is the first podcast. We've been talking about it for a while, and I think it serves as another avenue to get information out to the public. And
yeah.
I know that's been a big point of emphasis for
Correct.
Your first year in office.
Correct. Yeah, you hit that on the head. We've been looking for innovative ways to communicate information on behalf of the city, just recognizing that there are things that we need to communicate, and we've not done a great job of that just in our history. So this is one of those initiatives we've talked about for a while, as you mentioned, and excited to launch it.
Yeah, so we're nearing the end of year one in your administration. A lot of things happening, which is great. A lot of things coming in the new year, too, which we'll get into a little bit. But looking back at 2024, how has the first year been for you?
Yeah, first, incredibly alarming that we're already talking about the end of the first year. This year has gone by so incredibly quick. So within a new year in an administration, especially that first one, it's seems like you're completing a lot of the projects that are either in motion or not yet to hit that start for the project itself. And then the other part of it is planning. You know, I didn't come into office with fully developed plans and ideas and projects because I wasn't with the city already. Mm-hmm. So that's obviously a big need too with the City of Tipton, just planning for what projects we want to see come to fruition to help build a stronger community. But we had projects in the city, including at the parks, some downtown improvements that we executed. We had staffing needs when I joined in January that we successfully filled in the City of Tipton. Baseball has been a big conversation for the city and the community. And then the last one, of course, is branding. And this is one that maybe the community is not as aware of that we've been working on, but we're soon to, and by the time that this hits the internet, that it'll be formally published. But we're really excited about what that means for the City of Tipton, really trying to bring this inspired vision of who we are as Tiptonians and making the whole state of Indiana aware of that.
Yeah, it's a lot of exciting things. So let's get into the staffing aspect of it, because the people really do make the City of Tipton what it is.
Absolutely.
And coming into the year, there were several positions that needed filled, a couple that have come up throughout the year. Talk about a few of those staffing positions that have been filled across different city departments.
Yeah, this is probably a topic that's maybe not as exciting to talk about, but certainly it makes or breaks, you know, what services and amenities we can offer to the community. The first one that we filled right away was at the golf course, the golf superintendent. This is a position that was in flux after Jake had left the golf course. So we experienced in 2023 an environment where we had a vendor who's providing services, and there's mixed feelings on whether that was successful or not. So I connected with a very qualified candidate, Philip Beaver, and got him on board as soon as possible to help fill that vacancy. He has done a tremendous job. I've even had community members talk about the conditions of the golf course being better than they've seen them in the last 2, 3, 4 decades. So really impressed with Philip as he's come on board and made some improvements at the golf course. Another big priority as we entered the year was at the police department. We were down 4 patrolmen at the police department, which is a huge number considering we have 14 full-time members of the department. So being down 4 was very critical. We had people working incredible overtime hours, even unable to take holiday or vacation time. So really created this really challenging environment. We successfully today have filled all those positions. We do have one member who's leaving us this year for another opportunity. So we'll start the year down 1, but comparatively in a very strong position as we move forward. Some really excited new members to join.
I think we just got back one from the academy as of last weekend of this recording. So happy to have him join the streets now too.
Yeah.
And, hopefully you'll see Officer Tennell out patrolling here.
Absolutely. The other one I would talk about, because we've had a couple others where we've hired a new municipal services superintendent. We've hired a new director of golf at the golf course, but another very critical position that we've hired is the EMS captain. And as the City of Tipton was awarded the countywide EMS contract, we're still in this process of building what EMS means and looks like in Tipton. So building those strong relationships with IU Health, of course, Tipton County, who awarded that contract, and then also the personnel within the department and hiring the EMS captain who can provide that professionalism, understanding what processes and procedures need to be, how are we recording the use and of drugs that are utilized and just the practice of EMS and making sure that that's done appropriately. So that's going to be a very critical position, and excited to bring Nikki Moss on board, who's going to help us to build that out as we continue serving the community with EMS.
Yeah, and we're looking to hire a few more firefighter, EMT, paramedics currently as well. I think as of this airing, the application process will be closed, but in the near future, there should be a few more coming on to the fire department to start the new year as well.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Excited to really get the public safety fully staffed. That's a big priority.
Absolutely.
Here in Tipton. So moving on from staffing, you mentioned downtown. If you've driven through downtown, you've obviously probably seen some of the changes to Jefferson Street. Everybody knows about the whole controversial stoplights, stop signs. But what else has kind of happened in downtown in 2024?
Yeah, we had to, as you mentioned, we had to make a decision as a community, and this one of those projects it's a holdover that it was started previously, and it was incumbent upon us to continue this project more or less so we can just make progress. And I think this is going to be a big piece of my administration is making sure that we're always continuously making progress. And so the improvements included the resurfacing of Jefferson Street, which I think was probably one of the bigger efforts that we undertook this year, which included building the bump outs. And the idea there is trying to provide a safe environment for pedestrians that with the change from stop lights to stop signs, it created an environment where pedestrians no longer felt safe. And I can attest to that. I was the individual walking in downtown, and there is a changed environment now. So we have to implement projects and infrastructure that makes pedestrians feel safe, because pedestrians are what's going to make our businesses successful in downtown. So adding the bump outs helps to shrink the distance in which they walk. We took down the stoplights to formalize that transition from stoplights to stop signs. We will, in the new year, have what we call decorative stop signs, but they've got the black decorative posts, which just it's a better presentation. They will stand, plumb to the world, so they won't be tilted one way or the other, or be affected by the wind. So that'll be a big improvement. And even the size of the stop signs, do some research that we did, we discovered that we probably should actually have 30-inch stop signs in downtown. Today we have 24. So making sure that we're investing and implementing safe infrastructure is a big priority. And downtown's not done. We're going to continue to make these improvements, knowing that there are still some challenges in and around downtown, but we've added almost an innumerable number of parking spots in and around downtown, probably well in excess of 20 new parking spots, really responding to the community, from the community's perspective, this need for more parking. Though I think we have adequate parking in and around downtown, I think this provides a safer environment for people to get in and out, and really excited about that.
And Jefferson Street, especially the bump outs, we've heard the feedback, both good and bad, but it is also kind of a test or a trial for the bigger project in 2028. So, your feedback is important to us, obviously, and we're listening to this because there is a bigger project coming down the road.
Yeah, you're correct. And with the 2028 project, what we implement at that point is going to be there for seemingly forever. Where this allowed us an opportunity to beta test this, and you don't see this a lot from government, is testing ideas. And what I wanted to make clear to my department heads is this idea that we do have to test some of these ideas, because it's analysis paralysis, or forever talking about ideas but never actually executing them is no longer the mission of the City of Tipton. Like, we're going to start executing these ideas, and the bump outs were one of those. We understood that there were going to be those who weren't supportive of them, but we've seen them implemented in communities across Indiana. In fact, Cicero has bump outs. So this isn't a big city idea. This is trying to provide a safer environment for pedestrians, whether you're a big city or a small city, and Tipton is just maybe the most recent city.
Yeah. So other downtown news, Dora
Yep.
launched just a few weeks ago. How's that been going? How did that process come together?
Yeah, another project that was started by the previous administration, and then we saw it through completion, getting everything finalized and submitted to the state. Really, the idea was born out of trying to create an environment where people linger. And typically, people don't want individuals just to linger, but in a downtown perspective, the idea, and actually I just recently found out that Noblesville was the primary driver of DORA legislation at the State House, is to try to get people to stay longer in downtowns out of this belief, and this is documentable data you could find, the longer they stay, the more money they're going to spend. So if they're out buying a drink and enjoying, either venturing to other businesses with that, to create a better environment, or it helps us program more events to encourage people to come visit and linger for a while. Again, the goal there is that they're going to buy more products from our downtown retailers. They're going to buy more food and beverages from our downtown restaurants and businesses. So that's the primary driver. The initial implementation from a permittee perspective has gone well. The feedback so far has been great. There's still some lingering questions from the community. Again, the map can look quite confusing because we do encompass some residential areas that connects into the park. And so it's that question of what is and is not allowable. And I would say our map was created to match legislation, that we had to have a continuous area. In a DORA map, you have to have at least one permittee. But we had every vendor in downtown who sells alcohol wanted to participate. And then the other clunkiness with the legislation is that 2 DORA districts can't overlap. So you can't buy a DORA cup from one vendor and cross the DORA boundary into the other. That's actually non-compliant with state statute. So when we drew it to include the park, there's no active plans to have anything at the park, but we wanted to be future thinking. How can we make this inclusive that if one day we think there could be an opportunity, we already have it in place, set up so that we can do that. But to be clear, you can't buy a cup in downtown and walk through the residential areas to the park. That's actually not allowable based on our local ordinance. But because the residential area did separate the park from downtown, we had to include them in that.
Yeah, and it's this concept of planning for the future,
Correct.
Looking ahead, not just thinking, hey, let's do this for downtown and 2 years from now, hope that we can adjust it. Like
Correct.
we're future planning and looking ahead on all the different projects that are happening.
Yeah.
And kind of talking about a good segue of future planning, baseball.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, if you have been anywhere associated to Tipton, whether you live in Tipton or not, you've probably heard the controversy about the baseball field.
Yep.
Obviously, there's not a baseball field yet.
Right.
It can't just happen overnight.
Right.
And part of the reason for there not being a field yet or a complex is, again, this kind of future looking planning where we're looking at more than just baseball potentially.
True.
And there was news that you released earlier in December about the next steps. And so if you want to just touch on where the baseball project stands currently.
Yeah, so not to go and hash any previous information that we've already hashed, but for a project like this, its timeline from securing dollars to execution of the project truly and should be 3 years' time. And what we've got is some order of operations that were a little backwards. That true, we started with demolition, and it's probably not what should have been step one. But now as we look forward, we have secured $2 million that are very specific for this project. And as we look about next steps for what baseball could be, we've had a very recent conversation with some stakeholders that included leadership from baseball, softball, soccer, and there's conversations that have been had with the school corporation and county government. So this idea that as a community, can we all come together and solve this problem, which is that if you toured Tipton today and you had a young family considering Tipton as a location to move your family, and one very strong decision-making quality was the amenities or the youth sports facilities, your assessment of Tipton would not be very high.
Yeah.
We have soccer fields that are very disconnected from the urban core of Tipton County. out on some property near 2831. Our softball facilities, and kudos to them, busting their tails to try to create this environment where people can play softball. But they admit that there's some drainage issues that are probably solvable. And they've also made some improvements themselves on those facilities. Our baseball facilities, of course, don't exist anymore. So it tells a different story than I think Tipton believes, which Tipton's belief and what I've heard from people is this passion behind youth sports and wanting to get our students and children engaged in these activities, but our facilities don't reflect that.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm hoping now that we're trying to get, we've secured some dollars, and it's probably not all the dollars we need by any means, but can we create a bigger strategy, some master planning, again, future thinking that we know this is very important to the members of this community, the parents of this community, grandparents of this community. So how can we do this thoughtfully, purposefully, that provides them facilities that they can be proud of?
Yeah, and it's not just thinking about all the sports. Mm-hmm. It's also the planning for potential growth. Yep. We're not talking exponential growth, right? We're not going to double in size in a year by any means.
No, correct.
But is one baseball field sustainable where maybe 2 years down the road now we're going to need a couple different. Yep. So it's kind of looking ahead at what the needs may be 5-10 years from now. Yep. So it's more of a process than people think. And I'm happy dealing from the communications side. I know you're happy that we have finally gotten some information out there and we're starting to move forward in the process.
Yeah. So, and you're right that the priority, I would be very clear on this. The priorities, number one is going to be baseball.
Yep.
They're the only sport right now that doesn't have a facility. Soccer has a facility, softball has a facility, but we don't want to lose sight of that they also need some facility improvements. But priority number one will be baseball. And just as you mentioned, we know that they previously had three fields. So the priority is to rebuild those 3 fields that allows for the flexibility of future improvements. Yep. So yeah, we're continuing to make progress on that. I think communication and progress on this will be faster than we experienced in 2024. Again, just trying to respond and recalibrate this project took a whole lot more energy, time, and effort than I expected.
Yeah.
So I have some high hopes for 2025 and some of the information we'll be pumping out as a result.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Along the same lines of baseball, youth sports, parks. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot that's happened in the parks this year. Basketball, goals, updates, the trail projects. Can you talk about some of those exciting projects that have happened throughout 2024? Yeah,
there's been some creativity, in fact, with you brought up the basketball courts. And that was a project that was already pre-programmed for 2024. We were going to put a new asphalt top on that facility. And so I worked with Diana Tomlinson, park superintendent, and challenged her, can we get new goals? While you would see the new asphalt, it's not as exciting as seeing new goals, especially as a young student in this community. If you saw these acrylic backboards, there's a very modern looking basketball goal, where ours, right, they clearly showed the rage.
Yeah.
So worked with her to be creative on funding and within our budget, and we're able to successfully get that done. So I think we've got some really great basketball courts now that are highly visible to members either traveling to Tipton or from Tipton. We've, at this point, have concluded the Trails project to extend that. Now, we don't have formal approval from DNR yet, but we're still going through some of those steps. But the Trail's in. It's been developed and installed, so we're excited about that. And then other creativity. And with the Trails project, we had to be creative with some of the funding mechanisms. And using dollars like ARPA, which was available on that project, I would have had different goals for those dollars to create impact to the community, but I understood that this was a project that the community was passionate about. Yeah. They wanted to see, even there was some pessimism on whether or not this would be successful or not. Would we ever get the second phase of the Trails done? So I really wanted to work with council, clerk treasurer to make sure that we funded this project, but some other creative improvements that may or may not be as exciting was repaving the pool parking lot. Again, this is a project that has been in the budget for several years, and during the budgeting process, always got cut. And so what we did was included that into one of our paving contracts, used as an addendum because it couldn't qualify for state grant funding, but it allowed us to get a better negotiated price because it was included with other projects that they bid on. So that was one way that we expressed some creativity that allowed us to check off yet another project that has been lingering for a long time. So I think the facilities there at the pool, we've made some improvements, of course, to the splash pad back in 2019, and now improving some of the facilities that allow people to engage with it. Parking lot, the ADA trail as a result of the trail phase 2. And we got other improvements. We know that there's accessibility issues in and around the park, especially with our playground equipment. It's not really set up for ADA compliance. So I think we've got some exciting news that will be coming out related to that. We'll see some improvements at the park in 2025 as a direct result of that initiative, that focus, and providing some new playground equipment.
Yeah, and I think there's a big emphasis on finding, again, you talk about creativity, finding new creative ways to use the park, right? It's there. It's a beautiful park. People in Tipton love it. So how can we utilize that in different events? Like we had the first ever National Night Out in Tipton this year, looking at potentially, nothing set in stone, but can we do movies in the park, right? The concerts in the park are a huge success in the summer. Can we find more ways to give people things to do in Tipton, and using the park is a great opportunity there.
Yeah. The park is always a great amenity for any community because it doesn't cost you any money to go to the city park. True, it does cost you money to get into the pool and splash pad, but those have got operational costs that are associated with it. But to go to the park and engage in a concert, or if we are successful in this movies in the park, the cost of that will be nothing. So the opportunity for anybody in the city of Tipton to engage in those opportunities is virtually zero. As long as you can walk, bike, or drive to the park, that's available to you. So excited about how do we continue to be creative, encourage people to use these facilities, and just create this opportunity for people to commune together, to hang out with their neighbors and friends in unique ways that make us feel like a stronger community.
And creating this identity in the community and really tying into the people of Tipton is something that was strongly focused on when you set out to create a brand for the city. You wanted the feedback of the city. You did a bunch of focus groups, and you got the feedback from people out in the community, business owners, individuals, high school students, right? So now that the city branding is officially out, talk about that process and why it was so important to get done in the first year.
Yeah, what we wanted to start with was, as you mentioned, the feedback from members of this community. And true, we couldn't ask every member of this community to contribute, so we did have to create these focus groups. But it's a big initiative of mine in my time as mayor is to try to strengthen this sense of community pride. Because what I want is people to leave Tipton, and whether that's temporary or forever, hopefully it's not forever. Of course, as mayor, I don't want that. What I want them to do is talk fondly of the place that they came from or where they live. And I think that's something that we have been missing. While we do have members of the community who do talk fondly of the place they live or were from, what I want is, and we've all experienced this at one point in our life, where we see a commercial and it's representative of an organization we belong to, a business that we're employed with, or somehow an organization that we're a part of. And you get that sense of pride, like I'm from there, or I work there, I contribute to that success. I want people to see the branding from the city of Tipton and have this exact same response, the sense of pride and willingness to express to others where they're from in a way that's very passionate and very exciting. That's what Tipton is. I know we get a little downtrodden on this idea that Tipton just sort of gets in its own way. We keep tripping over our own feet. But there are already existing amenities, qualities about this place that are great, and why people are trying to move to this place that we call home. It's because there are great things about it. So I wanted to give people in Tipton this opportunity to celebrate that I am from this great place that's safe, that is walkable, and we're making improvements on the walkable piece of that. We do have great parks. There is a strong sense of support and passion behind students. That's what I want to make Tipton proud of, is that belief that we are a small town, yet mighty. We're in the middle of everywhere, that if you wanted to go to a Purdue game or Ball State game, even an IU game, like those aren't so beyond your reach. If you wanted to go to Klipsch or Ruoff, Deer Creek,
whoever
that's accessible. Yeah, exactly. Gainbridge,
Yeah.
Lucas Oil, like all these things are so accessible to us here in Tipton, yet our quality of life, I would say, is greater than that of some of our metro neighbors. And that's what I want people to be inspired by.
Yeah. And a big focus has been the open communication about all of it, right? That's why we've launched this podcast. That's why we started a Facebook page for the city for the first time ever. The branding, the city didn't have any branding. You look at cities around here, they all have at least a logo or something. The city, Tipton had a city seal, but that's not technically a logo, and no colors associated it. And, so I guess that's a kind of important topic too, is not tying into the school, right? We wanted a little bit of separation there. Obviously the school is a big part,
absolutely.
But kind of getting that separate from the schools.
Yeah.
So,
and it's, to be clear, it wasn't an opportunity to distance us from the school corporation. Actually, it was in great fondness and support of the school corporation that we wanted. They just recently announced their new branding. I don't know if it's 2 years old yet. So what we wanted to do is give them their own space to not only continue to build the equity within their own brand, but to own it so that we didn't infringe on that. And so that while we didn't use Tipton Blue, we do have 2 shades of blue in our color palette, and that was tribute to the fact that we have this very strong school corporation that's made investments back into themselves, continues to improve the quality of education at Tipton Community School Corporation. So, we were intentional about not copy and pasting the work that they have already completed to allow them to own that, because they did a lot of work to own that and to release that. And also wanted just to compliment the courage it took for them to do that, because I think they helped pave the way for the city to now engage in the same branding practice. Absolutely. But the colors are different, right? Nobody was expecting, or probably wouldn't have expected us to use a green in our color palette, for example. But what it allowed us to do is now we own this color palette, that this is representative of the city of Tipton. And again, I want people to feel inspired when they see that on a street department truck or a parks department truck, for not only the employees to feel that sense of pride, but then when community members see them, there's also that sense of pride as well. Yeah.
So a lot has happened, 2024.
Yeah.
Great first year. We're always looking for ways to continue improving communications, all these different projects that are happening. Is there anything, final note to kind of wrap up this first episode of the Tipton Thrives podcast?
Just that we're going to commit to continuous improvement, I think, is the mission here. Is we know that we're going to falter. We're not always going to execute everything as best as possible, but we are going to make attempts to get things started. And I think to that end, there's always that risk in getting something started, and we've seen it throughout 2024, where especially some of our downtown projects, for example, with the infrastructure, where we understand that this is a continuous process. But without starting the project, if you wait until you got it 99% figured out, you'll never get started.
True.
So that's what we're focused on, is making sure that we're continuously improving this community. In fact, this is called the Tipton Thrives Podcast, and it's that belief that Tipton will thrive. In fact, there's some circumstances where it's already thriving, so we're going to continue to build that sense within the community. But we want this to be a prosperous place where people can call home, and we're going to stay committed to that mission.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a great first episode. Quick housekeeping note. This podcast will air monthly, so the next episode will be released towards the end of January. So make sure you follow us. City of Tipton Facebook page. We'll post it there. Check it out. Check us out on YouTube, and then subscribe to the podcast on Apple and Spotify. So thank you so much, and we will catch you next time.
Yeah, thanks, Riley.